Hey, welcome. I'm Gary.
And I'm Arlene.
And yep, it's video in the middle of the week. Yes. Fiber Talk, midweek chat. And we're doing a video this week. Arlene and I, what we talked, it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about doing a show where we would talk about the original idea was books that needleworkers must have.
Mhm.
But we're going to go with what? Uh,
Books that are nice to own.
okay.
I'm not going to claim that these are must-haves. These are books that I have that Gary's going to contribute his view.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Arlene has library carts. I have six.
okay. Um, but it had started with Gary proposing, five needlework books that every needleworker must have. And I don't think that is possible to do. I think there are types of books that might be nice to own. And so I ended up coming up with categories that are that fall under the categories, sort of like my organizational system on my bookshelves that are always behind me in my floss tube videos. Um, so I pulled a few of my favorite books from some of those categories, and we just thought we would chat about them and show them to you and talk a little bit about why they're my favorites and see what you think of them. So,
Yep.
yeah.
And I'm not going to take 2 hours to list all these books and find links for them in the notes. So get out a pen and paper and make your own notes.
Yes,
Because,
absolutely.
yeah, if you've
Um,
ever taken a list of stuff and had to find links to it all, it takes a lot of time. Don't have time.
yep.
So get your own
And
pen and paper out, write them down. Yep.
yep. And I'll try to be clear with titles and authors. And I want to say, I mean, most of these books are probably available on Amazon, whether they're new or used copies. There's a few exceptions that I know to that, and I could probably just say out loud some author websites and stuff like that. But we could start with the assumption that a lot of them you could get to from Amazon.
Right.
That's where you can find a lot of them.
Yep. Okay, so what's our first category?
So the first category is what I call needlework techniques and books that show you the different techniques that are out there. There are cross stitchers that know how to cross stitch. There are needle pointers that know how to needlepoint. But sometimes you just want to try something new, or you want to explore something that you have never explored before. And the first book that I pulled out is this Royal School of Needlework Book of Embroidery. And Gary and I have talked about this book before. It just came out, what, last year? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a relatively new book. Where it came from, the Royal School of Needlework had put out these little books of each of their techniques. So this is the little book of blackwork. And I have two of these books, the black work and the white work books, and they're great. And what they are not, I mean, they're not really project books. They're about the technique.
Right.
I mean, there might be one or two things about a project, but it's really, in this case, learning about a technique. What the Royal School did is they took is it eight?
I think that's
I don't,
right.
all eight of those books, which are crewel work, canvas work, black work, silk shading, gold work, stump work, white work, and bead embroidery, and put it together in this one giant book. And it's eye candy. It is a resource beyond belief. It is the first source that I would go to if I wanted to explore something new. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I was just going to say that very thing. It's not an expensive book. You say Royal School of Needlework, and you think, oh, geez, it's going to cost me a fortune.
And you look how thick it is, and you
Right.
think it's going to
And
cost you a
it's
fortune.
not expensive at all. It was less than $30, I'm sure. Where normally you'd think that'd be a 75 or $100 book.
Yep.
But if you're looking to expand and try another technique, this is the book to own because it gives you all the basics, gives you a little project in each one, but it's not a project book. But the illustrations, the photography, as you can see there, will give you exactly what you need in terms of understanding what goes on. And then there's some basic instruction, and it will get you off the dime if you want to try a new technique. And yeah, I think we're not going to talk about books that people must have, but I would suggest that anyone who's looking to expand their techniques, this is a must-have book.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
really think
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It's really
And
well
so
done.
It is. It is very well done. And the photography, like you said in there, makes a huge difference to, some of the older books that exist might be good for their own specific things, but especially a newer book like this, you can so see exactly what's going on step by step. How do you lay gold work? How do you put down the stitches of black work? It's just phenomenal. But then sometimes you have a specific technique that you absolutely love, and what's contained within here isn't enough. And so that's where I end up having a lot of books on specific techniques. And
Yes.
again, these other books are not project books, because I have those. But one, for example, category that I have a number of books of are blackwork. Now, some of my blackwork books are like history, and that's interesting and that's great. And I love that background. But one blackwork I wanted to show is this book. It's called Blackwork Patterns. It's Laura J. Perrin Designs. This is one that I'm fairly confident you cannot get on Amazon, but you can go to her website. I got it from her website. Google Laura J. Perrin, you'll get there. This is all it is patterns after patterns after patterns of blackwork. And so when I have been doing a design for blackwork, even before I started, designing under Works by ABC, when I was doing my own sort of playing around with patterns of blackwork or designing of blackwork, my own things, this was an amazing resource. It's divided into like small, medium, and large patterns. And then she even gives ideas. So here I'm opened up to a medium page, and I'm just going to focus in on one row. Here's a basic pattern. Here it is embellished a little bit, and here it is embellished a lot. And it is, what does it say on the cover? A collection of over 600 stitchery patterns showing 1, 2, and 3 color variations intended specifically for blackwork designs. It's an amazing resource if you are into blackwork and into designing blackwork. So again, very little. I think there might be a page or two about history or something in the front, but this is for if you are interested in designing blackwork. It's phenomenal. I turn to this when I'm doing blackwork designing. It's
so interesting that exists, because now Laura Perrin, her primary business is charted canvas work, and I've done a couple of her things. She really does some beautiful work, some very creative work, but I did not know she even had that.
Yep. If you go on her website, because I was just checking this morning about where to, that just confirming that this book was still available on her website, and it is. She does have some blackwork designs, not many. Okay. I mean, the majority is certainly her canvas work, but she does have some blackwork designs in her.
For when you look at the body of her work,
yep.
To even think that she would put out a book about black work is the last thing that would enter your mind. So that's
absolutely.
And boy, you can tell that's an excellent resource there. Yeah.
Yep. And then while the Royal School book is amazing, it doesn't cover all the techniques that are out there. And so I just pulled a couple others. Now, I think these are from the same, even though they look physically very different. This is a very big book. This is a very small book. They are both the anchor book of. This is the anchor book of Hardanger. This is the anchor book of pulled thread. And I think like when they went to do reprints, they made them bigger. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, just the copyright dates are very different from these. But I have a whole bunch of these small ones. And so, like, for example, there is no Hardanger in the Royal School book. But to have a book that has stitches of Hardanger, very nicely diagrammed, so that, and there are some projects in here, but I have used this book more often for the diagrams of the types of stitches. Again, I have not, this is before I was doing any designing under Works by ABC, just playing around with Hardanger on my own. It's just really a nice resource to have a little book that has Hardanger stitches in it.
Yeah.
And on the similar style, I even had a paper in here that clearly I was marking out pulled thread stitches. So similar pulled thread stitches.
Yep.
Get the certain styles. So there are lots of techniques, and basically one of my entire shelves I can't do this pointing thing correctly, um, is mostly books of different techniques, and I you know I it's something that I've accumulated over the years. When I first started doing black work, I got intrigued and I wanted to know more about the history, and that's how I accumulated some of those. And then you go to a used book sale and you find a book on black work, and that you add that to your collection. And then I was playing around with pull thread, and I needed to find what books existed, and I got this book somewhere, and I see on the back it's available in these other series, and so I needed to get the other series, and then you end up with a lot of books like I currently own.
Yeah, and that's from the Anchor Thread people, right? That look like their symbol.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's my these are both from the Anchor Thread people, and like I said, I just think that this, like if you look on the back of this, here's the Hardanger. So I just think this is like the new version of this. This is the
Yeah.
older version, the small guy, and this is the new version,
Yep.
date wise and everything.
Had a meeting, repurposed the old content, and new
Yep,
format. Yep.
absolutely. Yep. Now, do you have any books that fall under the category of just techniques?
Yes, I do. I have two. Well, I would recommend Trish Burr's White Work with Color. Now that is it's a project book, but all of Trish Burr's books give extensive instruction on surface embroidery, whitework surface embroidery, and she's one of those where if you and you can't see this, I know. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to here. If you buy her books, the front end in the books I own will take you through all the techniques that are used. And so if you're going to do white work, embroidery, surface embroidery, Trish Burr is just one of the best. Now, of course, when it comes to this kind of instruction, you say Trish Burr, but then in the same sentence you have to say Mary Corbett, because you go to her website and the number of instructional videos she has and blog posts that demonstrate all these techniques is endless. But Trish Burr, her white work with color, she really redefined the white work world, I think, with this approach to color and her design techniques. But I think that is a really good one. And then the technique books. Now this is one, the proper stitch for counted thread. This is that I just you have one, I'm sure.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And so I have it in a different
Oh,
pile,
you
and
do.
I'll
Okay.
explain why in a second.
Well,
Keep
then
going.
we'll wait. Then we'll wait until that different pile comes up.
Okay.
And then another one for embroiderers that I have found very handy is Allison Cole's little book of hints and tips. And it's one of those that's done on a spiral, so it'll lay flat, which is nice. But again, couching stitches. She shows a little, of course, she does a lot of gold work. So, but different techniques that Allison has, and that's just a handy little book. And this is one of those that you have to poke around on her website a little bit to find it, because it wouldn't occur. But this has come in handy to me several times for these kinds of techniques. Yeah. So, okay,
Awesome.
that's all. That's you know.
Okay.
You have the library. I have the small collection.
Well, so I almost pulled the Trish Burr White Work book, but more for my second category. And so my second category, which absolutely runs into the first category, is books that have projects in them that I want to do. And some of those books involve a new technique. So, for example, the Trish Burr White Work book does have projects that are really tempting to do. The problem is I already had so many other books pulled that one just didn't come off the shelf. But a whole category in itself are basically all my Yvette Stanton books.
Yes.
So the ones that I own, and there are more of them. So Yvette Stanton, who has been on Fiber Talk, is in Australia.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And she is known for her different for doing amazing research and then putting together these wonderful books on various whitework techniques. Although I feel like one of her more recent ones wasn't whitework, so she like threw us all off by doing one that was slightly different. But the ones that I own are early style hardanger, Portuguese whitework, Sardinian knotted embroidery, and I never know how to say this, Montmelic?
That's how I say it, Mount Melic.
Okay,
Yeah.
Montmelic embroidery, inspired by nature. And I mean, these are ones that I've accumulated because there was something about pictures, or let's just go ahead and blame Mary Corbett right now when she writes a book review. I mean, many of the books that I own that were bought new are thanks to Mary Corbett's book reviews.
Yes.
Let's just be honest here. I know for a fact when Mary Corbett did a book review of this one, she included a picture that just screamed at me like, I need to do that. And I bought the book and I just took out the project because I thought, why not? I'll just show a little project in the middle of all the books. So this is the piece of Portuguese whitework that I
look
did.
at that. Oh, that's beautiful.
Book. And I know I showed this on a floss tube some time ago, but it's all bullion stitches. And that's just the style that it's like a sampler, so to speak, of the different motifs. That's what you would say, different motifs.
Right.
But that was the picture that, luckily all these pages are still in here, and so I could tell you it's right. This picture.
Yep.
And I was like, I need to do that. And so I bought the book and then I did it. And I even counted it up because the paper is sitting right here. There are 2,156 bullion stitches in that project.
Jeez.
Because I guess at some point I wanted to know how many I had.
That's a lot of wrapping.
Yes. And you know what I did when I was doing this, before I started it, I did do a small little, on the equivalent of a doodle cloth. I did a small little test for myself because before I jumped into this, I wanted to make sure I was going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I did, a small little flower shape or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is cool. Yes, I want to jump right in and do this. And so I did.
And look at that. It's a beautiful piece. Yeah. It worked out very nice. Yeah. Her
Yes,
books. Now she does extensive research on all of those. And usually that's in travel back to where the technique originated.
Yep.
And what is that Sardinian one? Is that the one where there's a town or a region on it that I can never pronounce? Yeah, Tulada.
Tulada.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she'll go back and study the techniques from people who do it the original way, or go to the museums or whatever. So when you're getting those things, it's not some Americanized, Australianized version. It's the real deal. Yeah.
And talk about the real deal, the early style hardanger. This is the real deal. This is not the Americanized version of it. This is the type of linen that's used, the size, the sizing, everything. I don't say it's 100% different. It's not 100% different, but there's there's a fascinating, the first few pages is sort of the comparison between, for lack of better words, what we think of as hardanger and this early style. And again, about her research and, where does it come from, and, all the background research and history that she does, and, including old photographs and stuff like that. So she does an amazing job with her books. And like I said, the Portuguese whitework is the only project I've actually done from one of her books, but that doesn't mean I don't want to do more of the projects. But isn't that the truth for just about everything that we do here?
But as with, I'm sure, everyone we show today, Yvette's instructions, illustrations, photographs, impeccable, just impeccable.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and maybe I should have used this as my transition from you, because I actually did have a Trish Burr book picked out.
Yes.
I went with this one, needle painting. And because I have Oh, I should have brought it up and I didn't. I did do the first project from this book, which was just a simple little flower. The I think it was this one.
Hmm.
And I should have brought it up. It's just it proved to me how with good instructions you can do needle painting. And this book has amazing instructions in it. As Gary was just saying, the Trish Burr instructions are just phenomenal. And so it's DMC thread. It's a piece of white fabric that you would
Right.
buy at Joann's. It's nothing fancy. I mean, that's what I learned from this is that needle painting doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need, you know, high gloss silk threads that come from Japan in fancy packages. You don't need, you know, some fancy fabric that is hard to get. You can go to Joann's and buy white cotton and use DMC thread and do these beautiful things that she does. And so that white workbook that you showed, or a book like this, and this one is specifically flowers and birds. So it's all about, you know, what you're interested in doing. But that this is the techniques in here, or the technique of needle painting. I just would love to do some more of the projects that are in here, and they're small. I mean, these are small
Right.
little things, and
Yeah, I think that's the key thing with Trish. And when her subhead there, Fresh Ideas for Beginners, it literally is that kind of a book. I have
yep,
that book too. It literally is that. And then you look at those designs and you go, oh, it'd take me half my life to do that. These are very small designs,
yep,
very small, very approachable. Hold them in your hand in a small hoop and stitch them. And like you said, DMC on just any a regular white cloth, and
mm-hmm,
you can do it. So your investment to try a new technique is minimal to nothing,
yep, yep,
and you
yep,
can and you can literally create what she shows in the book. It's not
yep,
like, oh, I'll create something that looks really cheesy. No, you can create that right there, and her instructions are so clear. Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
absolutely,
yep.
absolutely. Um, this is I got to do this someday. I got to do this project on the cover of this book.
I forgot I own that book. I
You
forgot
do.
that. Oh
Okay.
man, that was so. Oh yeah.
So this is the book is called Stumpwork and Goldwork Embroidery, inspired by Turkish, Syrian, and Persian tiles by Jane Nicholas. Um, and again, we're blaming Mary Corbett for an amazing book review,
Yep.
and just I think it just took the cover of the book for me to say that is gorgeous. I've only done a couple of projects using Stumpwork, and um, I'm going to say it's not my favorite technique, but when you see something like this, it's like I want to make those flowers three-dimensional. I want to do this work, and and it's a beautiful book. And if you want to, like, I mean, there's a temptation to go on, and her website, she sells kits, so it'd be really tempting to get all the material, especially the goldwork parts of this, that would be a little bit more challenging to source. It'd be really tempting to do all this. She is in England, I think.
Yes. Yes, she is.
So there's always the shipping costs that make things add up a little bit more than I really want it to be. But it's another beautiful book. It's another one that has quite a number of designs in it that I want to do. But it really is the one that's on the cover that
Yeah.
just screams at me to say, I want to do this.
Yeah, that
Um,
one. Yeah, if you ever want to sell a book and you got an image like that, that'll do it.
yeah,
Yep.
yep, yep,
Yeah, and she's certainly, if not the one of the top queens of stump work
yeah.
in terms of her ability and teaching and everything else. So her books are very good. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I know those stump work ones. Oh man, every time you see one, you go, oh, I'd love to
Hmm.
do that. And then you sit down to do them, and it's like, yeah. And you know, I'm sure, like anything, once you dig in and do it, it's not as tough as it looks. But
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
that can be a little intimidating there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. But like as you said, like everything else, you just got to do it, give it a try, and
Yep.
things that come out could be beautiful.
Yep.
Um, and then the last book that I pulled for this category, Cruel Twists. The author is Hazel
Yep.
Blom
Blom.
Blomkamp.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And is it Jacobian or Jacobean
Yes.
embroidery? I
Yes.
never know which
I
way to
don't
say
know
it.
either.
Yes.
I
Okay.
just say yes.
Um,
Yes.
there are a number of projects in here that just appeal to me, but where the bookmark is the one that I keep saying I want to do. Although I don't want to do it on this color background. I keep thinking like a dark navy would look better, but it just, and again, I look at the instructions for it and it just looks so, and it just uses like, well, this uses anchor. It'd be easy enough to do DMC threads and some seed beads. So totally doable. There's some interesting stitches. It is very clearly laid out. You're working on this flower. This is how you're going to do it. You're working on this flower. This is how you're going to do it. Like I've read through these instructions and I have felt like, gosh, I could totally do this.
And look at that.
Um,
Look at that.
it's
Oh.
yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
So and so I have this book and another book, and there's a few projects in both of them that I want to do, but this is the one that if I were to jump in, this would be the first one this is the one that stands out to me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. She puts an extra beauty in that Jacobean. I don't know. Yeah. I go do that every time. Which way to go? But anyway,
Yep.
in that technique, she really puts a beauty into it that I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you see everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yep. Okay.
Yep.
Do I have anything
Yep.
else? Oh, yes, I do. Oh, that's right. I pulled this one for projects with instruction.
Uh-huh.
I pulled it because I wanted to show it, but now that this is the right category,
Okay.
and then if I would switch to the view that shows me, then people could see it.
Okay.
It'd be exciting. There we go. Inspirations.
Ah.
Their passion for needlework, Factorious 7, is this one. This is their newer book, and this is one of those. I'm sure there's a Hazel project in here, but beautifully presented all the way around. Just gorgeous work, beautifully photographed. All the charts, the materials. Here's some Jacobean
Oh.
that
Now, do you think that's done in wool? Because I mean that
this is, yeah, you can
okay.
tell this is done in wool. Yeah, it's true. I mean, this is a caliber of book that even comes with its own ribbon bookmark kind of thing. But again, all the instructions, Inspirations magazine. If you're not getting that, you should get that because it's just nothing but eye candy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then they'll have the projects, and then they'll have the back half of the book is the instructions.
Mm.
And all the detail for what you need, all the materials, the whole bit.
Mm.
Beautiful. Now this was kind of a pricey book, as I recall. It wasn't $20 for sure, but all done in the Inspirations style, where it is absolutely beautifully bound, hardback book. Photography beyond belief, the whole bit. This is one of those that's just fun to just look at.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, projects in here. Now this is one where I do this with every Inspirations issue. Is I want to do that, and I want to do that, and I want to do that, and then in the back, then there's a
Oh,
pocket,
with all the patterns.
with all the, so you can get that. I'll hold it upside down so people can't copy, but. But with all the things, so you can trace them. You can copy them smaller, larger, trace them, do whatever. But this is this Inspirations Factorious 7, and it was all done, photographed in a factory, I think, an old wood cottage. But it's just beautiful to look at. But that's and they have two of these books. I think it is. I think it's two. The first one sold out so fast that they couldn't keep up. But yeah, I would highly recommend that. Yeah. Okay, that's all I have for that category. Next.
Okay. So the next category is stitch dictionaries. And I have a whole bunch of variations of that up on that shelf right there. And I could have pulled more of them. I basically pulled some of my favorites, some of my go-tos when I want to come up with different stitches. And so certainly when I'm doing counted canvas work, I will go to these, but I'm just going to use the example of something very recent. So I just recently had come out with a design that is this menorah for a Hanukkah design, and the candles on the menorah are different stitches. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So these are special, what cross stitchers might refer to as specialty stitches. And so I went to do this. I pulled my various books of these kinds to find what I was looking for. And there's, so sort of in order of what I usually go to, the first book that I often go to is this one. It is called Encyclopedia of Needlework by Donna Cooler. I know I got this at Joann Fabrics. I don't, I mean, I'm assuming you could get it at on Amazon, but I have found this one to be one of my best references for various stitches because it's divided into categories. Can you see there? It says needlepoint stitches.
Right. Yep.
And then here it says embroidery stitches. And then it says counted thread stitches.
Yep.
And then I guess it says, I mean, basically, depending on what you're trying to do, it has a whole bunch of different types of stitches without overwhelming you with tons of them. I love that it, for each of these, and I'm just going to turn to the counted thread. Okay, now apparently there's a bookmark here. So apparently I was doing something on this page. For each stitch, it has a photograph of what it looks stitched up. It has a diagram, and it has some description and like how to stitch it or when to use it, some basic information. I just think the way this book is laid out is so useful. And again, I will turn to it when I'm doing counted thread work, like specialty stitches for the menorah, or I will turn to it when I'm doing canvas work and I need different. Now, there's a lot of overlap. Let's just be clear that just because I was looking for stitches that I was going to be stitching on fabric doesn't mean I only looked in the counted thread section. No, I looked in the needlepoint section as well. Now, some of these needlepoint stitches totally wouldn't have worked. They cover too many fabric threads, and they would have been too like loosey-goosey on a fabric. They would have been fine on canvas. But this book just has so much in it in terms of different types of stitches that I just have found this one to be a really useful book. And so again, it very often is one of the first books that I turn to. So again, Encyclopedia of Needlework, Donna Cooler.
Now, is that a fairly recent book?
No, I've had this one around for a while. It is, copyright 2000.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know when I got it, but in
the
early 2000s.
Clearly looks like one to own, yes.
Yeah, no, It's definitely a good one. And given that it's 2000, you could probably get used copies of it somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Another one that I will go to as one of my early, again, I was coming up here to look at my books for that menorah project, is this book called Stitch Sampler, The Ultimate Visual Dictionary to Over 200 Classic Stitches. The author, Lucinda Ganderton. It's DK Publications. That symbol there looks familiar to me as a bunch of other things. The reason why I like this book specifically, and you'll see this in other books, is in the beginning, if I can get to it, not the very, very beginning, but when you get to the right page, you have all the stitches shown to you.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah.
All in one place. So I could skim through these few pages and say, oh, there's something that's going to work. Turn to page 80. There's something that potentially might work. Turn to page 67. Or I could skim through these pages and say, nope, nothing in here is going to work. Close the book, put it back on the shelf. But because it has these pages like this, it's become one of my favorite books because they did this gallery of stitches.
Yeah.
And then also when I do turn to the pages, I find the way they show like a needle. They show a needle in the fabric. I find
Hmm.
that, I mean, it's not quite diagrammed. They actually show needle and fabric. It's a helpful way to do the stitches.
Sure.
But to me, the gallery of stitches in the beginning makes this the most useful, a very useful way of using a book like this.
Well, I really like that. That's a good
Yep.
idea. Yep.
Yep. And I don't know where I picked this one up and how long ago I picked this. Again, this one's been around in my world for a long time. Copyright 1999. So this one has been around in my world for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and then another one, before I switch types, that I like because of a gallery of stitches, and there's a few of them like this. Susies mini stitches. I feel like I have 2 or 3 of these Susie stitches. Susie Murphy. This, I don't think you could get this kind of thing on Amazon. You might need to get this from like a needlework store. I'm looking for a copyright date, 2008 for this one. And again, the reason I like it, this one's at the back. She's got all the stitches in color on the back.
Yeah.
And you could do a quick skim through and say, gosh, that's going to work for me, or maybe that's going to work for me. Oops, I'm going to flip back to the page where it's diagrammed. And the diagrams, she's got the picture, the diagram, some information about the stitch, and so on. So the Susie books, which again are very much in the needlepoint world, but so many stitches translate back and forth, are so easy to, it's another resource. And I have the mini stitches, and I have another one that I think is called small stitches. And the reason I have those is because I am, I stick in the small world. I don't do painted canvas where I have big areas. I need to stick with the small things, like on a small counted canvas project or on counted thread as a part of like a cross stitch project. So then this one I was looking up this morning. Sandra Arthur is the author. Have you had her on Fiber Talk?
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
yes. Oh, yes.
Her Shapes of Needlepoint series. And again, don't limit yourself to needlepoint, because this was probably the most helpful one to me when I was doing my menorah. Now, I only own this one, which is volume 1 or series 1, which is circles, squares, triangles, and rectangles. But I knew once I kind of worked it out in my mind that I needed squares. And so luckily I had the book that had squares, and I could go to the pages that had squares. And I knew that I needed squares that were 4 by 4 to cover 4 fabric threads. So not 4 canvas threads, but 4 fabric threads. And here were a whole series, nicely diagrammed, of 4 by 4 square threads.
Yep.
And a whole bunch to choose from. Some of them would work perfectly fine for me. Some of them wouldn't. Some of them were just like, and then at a certain point it turned to 5 by 5s. But this, again, just because you are someone who does, I want to say counted thread, when you do cross stitch on fabric, or when you do things based on fabric and you do specialty stitches, I know like when you're doing it, entering into Woodlawn needlework exhibit, they refer to that as counted thread when you do specialty stitches. So that's what I'm going to use. If you do counted thread and you're designing or you're coming up with some of your own stitches, books that are labeled needlepoint are perfectly fine to get, because a lot of the stitches are going to work just fine for you.
Just a grid. It's a grid.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
it's a
Yeah.
grid.
Mm-hmm. Now I
And
will.
so,
Yeah, and I'll add to that that she also has apps.
mm,
There are at least 2 of them. This is the one that I keep on my phone, but she has apps, and then shapes, and so so it's a circle,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And there's your 4x4 round Jessica 4x4, and then there's your instructions.
Awesome.
So I know there are I shouldn't say I know, I am rather confident that there are two of these apps. Whether you have to pay or not, I don't know, but I keep this one all the time. And so there it's circle, rectangle, square, triangle, which it looks like that matches up with the book that you
That's this
have.
book. Yes.
Yeah, so here's crisscross triangle 3x5, and then there's the diagram. Extremely handy to have this.
That's
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Because when you're doing traveling, for instance, or at a retreat or something,
You wouldn't carry this thing.
no,
No.
but you'll be happy to have this along. So
Absolutely.
that's a nice addendum to that book. I
Uh-huh.
mean, a lot of value to the book, but having that app is
Yeah.
and and I've had instances where you're with someone and the subject comes up about a stitch, and you can look it up in there and get the answer you need.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a nice addendum to go with those books. And Sandy Arthur is just one of the true great ones. Really
Oh,
good.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
And it was in this category that I put the proper stitch.
oh, okay. Yeah.
I
Because saw that coming.
Yep. So to me, although there are a couple of projects, I think it's literally 2 sampler projects that are in the back. To me, there have been times that I have looked at this book for the stitches that are in here, for guidance on, like as much as you and Vaughn have been talking about the Montenegrin stitch, I had to pull out this book and sort of learn a little bit more about what is this that they're talking about so much. Or I mean, I admit I have not used this that much. I purchased this years ago, and vaguely knew that it was something that would be useful. And there have been times I've looked up stitches in here. So it falls under the stitch category. So now, do you have a hardcover copy?
I have the older version.
Okay?
There's apparently two. Well, not apparently. There, in fact, are 2 versions, and I have the older version.
Okay.
At least that's what Vanna tells me. Is I have the older version by Darlene Osteen, and you can tell one by the color, but then also mine is spiral.
Oh, yes.
So it lays flat, and but yeah, these are I think this book is just gold in terms of what it shows, and yeah. So that's what I'm told is I have the older version, hard to get, and this was given to me by somebody who had 2 copies and was kind enough to give me one. But yeah.
Now, I just noticed this. This says revised and expanded.
Yeah. See, you have there's more. Yours has more.
Okay.
I don't know. It's probably one of those he said she said things in terms of which is better, but more. And yeah, anybody who's going to do the Montenegrin stitch, the only way you do it effectively is this right here. You got to own this book by Amy Mitten, Montenegrin stitch. You just got to book this thick on just how to do one stitch. It's 2 variations of a stitch, but to turn corners, turning corners going up, turning corners going down, doing them in a V, everyone is different. You got to have this book to do it. This is that of all the stitching I've ever done, this has been the most interesting ride, the Montenegrin stitch, because it starts out overwhelmingly intimidating to wait a minute, this isn't all that difficult to do except for the turns, to the turns aren't too bad, to wait a minute, this is a fantastic stitch. This thing is really beautiful. I mean, I went through all of those emotions just doing that one band in the Queen sampler of course, doing it several times because I kept messing up. But yeah, this has been, and it is an absolutely beautiful stitch, and you can do it reversibly. And but yeah, Montenegrin stitch, since you brought it up, you got to have that book to do it. Just no way around it. But it's one of those stitches where in future things, now that I've had to do it so many times, when I have a vine, rather than just making X's, I'm highly tempted
Oh,
to do the Montenegrin because of the beauty that it adds. Yeah,
hmm,
yeah. It would be one of those modifications that would be worth doing, I think.
interesting.
Yeah. So,
Huh,
yep. But yeah, the proper stitch. Yeah. Yep.
awesome.
Handy tool. Okay.
Yes, yes. Okay, so now I'm moving into my fourth category of books.
Okay.
All right. So now these are, I will fully admit, are of my fourth and fifth categories are things that are very interesting to me. And I think are going to be interesting to some people, maybe not to everyone. And I've got one of my shelves, which might just be off camera, I can't quite tell, is devoted to books on color.
Mm,
And but very specifically, I'm not interested in every book on color that's out there because so many of them just don't apply to stitchers. There's a lot of color theory and things that are very much related to like painters, by the pure nature of our work, where we don't mix colors in the same way that painters mix
right.
colors.
Right.
But there have been a couple of books out there that I have just found really interesting, really helpful. And here comes Trish Burr again.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Color Confidence in Embroidery by Trish Burr.
Yep.
Um, and I think we're blaming Mary Corbett and a book review on this one. So why
Absolutely
not?
are. Yep.
Uh,
It's her fault.
Um, and once again, and again, loving that Trish Burr talks the language of DMC because everything that she's using in here is DMC is numbered by DMC colors, or is she's using the numbers of DMC so that it doesn't matter where you are. Well, I was going to say it doesn't matter where you are in the world, as long as you have access to DMC, you can talk. You know, if you are liking a particular color palette or like this is a page where she's referring to harmonizing schemes, color schemes. These numbers that are underneath this color palette are DMC numbers. And wow, if this is a color palette that really appeals to you right here, boom, there are the DMC thread suggestions right in front of you. If you she's got a whole section of design schemes, and she's named them by movies. And it's interesting how much you might agree or not agree with the colors, but like A Passage to India, and I could see those colors in like Indian saris and stuff like that, or
Right. Right.
The Sound of Music. I think about the colors that are in the costumes and so on from The Sound of Music. Or where's the one that the Laugh Chocolat, that movie. Obviously, you've got the browns and the colors of chocolate right
Yep.
there. So and there's so much more in this book besides that section of color schemes. But there's a lot about color theory in general. But again, color theory that's going to help a stitcher. And I think this color combinations. I know I used this at one point when I was looking for pastels, contemporary, vibrant, antique. I was doing a design and I wanted to pick out colors that would be considered antique. And then I got myself stuck with, well, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of DMC colors? And I'm going through my books and I came across this page and I looked at the colors here. I'm like, yeah, those are antique colors. And wouldn't you know it, there was a whole chart of DMC colors
Right.
and this was just this. So this is a phenomenon. And yes, there's some projects in the back. I think there's other Trish Burr projects that would be more interest to me. It's the beginning 2/3 of this book is what's absolute gold to me in terms of color and design work for me. So
Yeah. That book is, to me, all the things you described, but for people like me for whom color is an incredible challenge, that right there allows me to put things together because you can take those little strips of colors and you can lay out the DMC threads and see it right there. And then you can, if you want to vary from that, you can do it. But you have that base and you know that base works because it came from an expert who put it together. And so you are working from a foundation where someone who is highly skilled at color doesn't need that. And so I look at say a sampler where I want to change a couple of colors. Well, how would I do that? and this would help me put that together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah, exactly. She's and I think you hit it on the head that for Trish Burr, all the talent, all the skill, all the things that she has, everything is DMC.
Yep.
So everybody can approach it, everybody can do it without, fancy floss or whatever we're calling it
Yep.
these days, without silk, none of that.
Yep.
Straight DMC, and so you have that common foundation through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, people say, oh, DMC, that's just blah 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 blah. Look at her stuff and tell me
Yep.
it's not.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Look,
just
yeah.
tell me.
Look at the cover
Yeah.
here. It's all DMC.
Yeah, convince me that DMC thread doesn't get the job done, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
she does
Yeah.
it. She does it time after time after time. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's another book. I wouldn't say it's as good as that one, but another sort of in similar style, again using DMC numbers as to help guide you. Color Confident Stitching: How to Create Beautiful Color Palettes by Karen Barbie. And I don't know for sure. This may have been on Mary Corbett that I first heard of it. Don't quote me on that, but there may be a book review about it on her website. But again, some beginning parts about the color wheel and so on. But I loved that she talks about, color moods, vivid colors, muted colors, dark colors,
Yep.
and does that all in term, here are the vivid colors that you might use for
Oh,
DMC.
see, look at that. Yeah.
Yep. Here are muted colors, and here are some DMC numbers that go with them.
Okay.
This kind of stuff is valuable for us as needleworkers to have that language that we can talk about. There was also, where's the page that I'm looking for? Maybe not. There's a few projects in here, again, nothing that I would use, but again, some additional, similar to the Trish Burr book, not as good as the Trish Burr book, but again, because it's specifically for stitchers, it's got some pieces to it that are useful to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
what was the author on that? I missed that
Karen,
again.
Karen Barbie, Barbe, with an accent.
Okay.
And then the last one, which I'll start right here, saying it's not specifically for stitchers, but it's not like painters either. The Complete Color Harmony Pantone edition.
Mm-hmm.
So, in talking about a common language, stitchers, our common language is DMC, but for a lot of people out there, when it comes to color, Pantone colors are the common language. You can find a lot of things out there, and then they coordinate it with the Pantone colors. And you can find online Pantone color numbers for DMC. No one's going to claim this is the be-all, end-all list, but there are some lists floating around out there that DMC color number blah, blah, blah is Pantone color blah, blah, blah. So that means when I am looking at a book like this and I am looking, I was just looking at this the other day, working on a design. I'm trying to come up with a color scheme to go with the design. And what's stuck in my mind are things like bold. I want some bold colors. And there's a whole bunch of color schemes here. And I'm looking at some of the words that they're using to describe. And some of the words that I turned to were things like rich, playful, robust. So when I kept turning to pages like that, they were really pretty much the colors that were in my mind. And what I liked about it is that these circles had three colors, like a main color, a minor color, and a accent color. And they were very much matching up to colors that I was thinking of. And I know that if there's any circle that's really like, wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for, I could then go online, find one of those charts and or just take out my DMC threads and my DMC color card and pretty much match up to, a source. This is a source of color theory from a different direction.
Right.
That allows me to say, here is a whole bunch of colors that play nicely together. and they're not coming from DMC World. They're just coming, and it's a much larger range than DMC World. But they are saying that these 3 colors give you, for example, a sophisticated look. If I were looking to make a sophisticated look, maybe one of these color palettes would be what I'd be looking for. And then translate that to some DMC threads that I might be using, or over dyes or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a fairly recent book, and I was intrigued when it first came out. 2017, and it's been an interesting resource to have. So that's my color.
Yeah, Pantone. Pantone is, when it comes to color, I mean, they've been doing color forever. And in the publishing world, that was one of our Bibles, was one of their books when I first started in the magazine business, because you learn the Pantone colors, but then all the things that go behind color when it comes to printing. And then they also are one who has a color of the year each year.
Oh, yes.
And so that's always a highlight in the fashion world. What is the color of the year? Because they track all the trends. And so when you have all those different mood colors and combinations, those all stem from these people who track colors and determine, this fall blue is in. When they say blue is in or green is in, that comes from these people who track all of this and look at where things are being used. They don't set it. They just take what exists and then are able to determine what people are going to be into in the coming whatever season it is. And of course, that all stems from fashion and the billions and billions of dollars they're involved in fashion. But it determines automobile, car color combinations, yet clothing. But then it also falls into furnishings, interior decorating, the whole bit. And Pantone is kind of one of the home bases for that kind of thing. And
they just recently came out with the Pantone color of the year for 2020 is going to is a classic blue or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, Gary will like that. He likes blue.
I do.
That's his color.
And I would add too, since we were talking about color, add too that
yes.
The DMC book, not the one that's printed, but the one that comes with threads, the actual thread.
Yep.
And you can see those are actual thread samples. That is one, you don't have to be a designer to get value out of this. And they'll be available at DMC's site, and then they'll be out of print, and then they'll come back. So you kind of just have to check. But I highly recommend that anyone who does needlework at all extensively, that you own one of these.
Absolutely.
It's worth the money because it's here. Let me just go to the full deal here, because it's huge. You can see that it's just all of their colors, and then it will tell you what colors are available in what thread types. So you can know that I can get pearl in some colors, and now I've unfolded it and I'm going to regret it. But so all of that, this is so worth owning.
Yes.
Because I know, I mean, I don't do any designing, and I've hauled this thing out more than once since I bought it, because I wanted to know, can I get this color in a Pearl 12, or what other variations do I have? Do exist in this color range? Any number of things. But yeah, this is one of those that not a reading book, not a project book by any stretch, but to get the ones with the actual thread, that's worth having. Yes,
absolutely.
Yep.
I know a lot of stitchers will use that when they're changing the fabric color, and they intend to use the same color threads, but they discover that the called for threads in a pattern are either too dark or too light because they've changed the fabric color. They need the resource of, I need this kind of blue, I just need it a little darker, a little lighter.
Right.
That is the perfect source to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like having a pair of scissors to me. You need to have that in your arsenal. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I have my fifth and last category here of books. And again, this one's a very personal one, but it's something that I would suggest to people. when I have been lucky enough to go to an exhibit of some kind that involves needlework, and there is a catalog or a book that is put out, I have come to learn that it is worth buying the book. And I don't have many of these, but there have been a few exhibits that I'm really glad that I own the book, and I'm going to use this as a great example. So a few years ago, more than a few years ago, do I have a date? 2010, there was an exhibit at the Connecticut Historical Society on Connecticut needlework, women, art, and family. And I went to the exhibit, and it was beautiful. And they had all variety. They had samplers, they had quilts, they had all kinds of things. Spent a long time, read everything that they had on the walls. And at the end of it, and I think I even sat on a bench and read the sample copy of the book they had there. And I was like, you know what? I really want this book. I want to remember this exhibit. And so I bought a copy of the book. And I know I sat and I read through it, and then I put it on the shelf. And, I didn't regret buying it, but I wondered, when would I open it up again? Well, it turns out I did open it up again, because I also have, and I've talked about this before, when Winterthur in Delaware has their needlework exhibits, which happen every 2 or 3 years, there was a time, and this one doesn't have a date on it. It might have been just like a year or two later. I saw this quilt, or technically it wasn't a quilt. It's a needle weaving bed covering. It's referred to as a bed rug. And I saw this at Winterthur, and there was something about it that made me think, I saw that at the Connecticut Historical Society. But the description very clearly said it was owned by Winterthur, which means it wasn't made by someone in Connecticut. And I was able to go home and open up my catalog and find that I wasn't crazy. I saw something similar to it, but it actually was something different, and they were made by sisters.
Oh, no
And it
kidding.
was so cool to then read the whole history behind this. And I just loved that I had this record,
Right,
that I
right.
had this. There was an exhibit in New Jersey, local here, not how long ago was this? 2014. And this is all samplers. So talk about, eye candy of just samplers. And these are samplers that were just made by schoolgirls in New Jersey. And it just gives you just the briefest sense of, all right, this is just one state, and it's a small state, and this is just a sampling of what could be made of all the samplers that exist out there. So going to this exhibit, and it was like, again, yes, even though I've read everything that's on the walls and everything, I want to remember it. I want to have this to hold on to. And then my favorite story of things like this is the time I heard about this, and it may have been that I heard about through Mary Corbett, when the samplers from the Betty Ring collection were being sold by Sotheby's. And they actually did something very unusual and were having pre-sales for the catalog of this. So this is a Sotheby's catalog, but it's samplers. And I actually went into New York City, and they had them available. I mean, anyone could go and just see them. I was in no way bidding, and I was, they were available to see for a week or two before the sale.
Right.
But I purchased this catalog because they were samplers and they were beautiful. And these were from the collection of Betty Rings. So this is top quality. It was very interesting to have this, to be able to say, these are considered top quality schoolgirl samplers. What makes them top? What can I learn by owning this?
Right.
So that, it's fun to own something like that. So I just encourage, when you have the opportunity to go to an exhibit, whatever it is, whether it's samplers or needlework of any kind, if there is a catalog or a book that goes with it. I mean, I always, here's another Winterthur book. I always purchase these when they are out. You just never know when you're going to want to turn back to it in the future. It's a souvenir of your experience. And as a needleworker, there's inspiration that's inevitably going to come from them. So
Right. Well,
that's
and if you can't go to the exhibit, you can buy those books. Just
yes,
about all of them will sell them, so you can
yes,
experience the exhibit without making the trip.
sure. And I
Not
know
the same as being there, of course, but
yes.
at least you have that. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's some people that would, I know in Delaware, within the past year, I want to say, there was a fairly large sampler exhibit and they came out with a fairly good chunky size book that went with it. And I feel like I've seen people on blogs or Instagram or somewhere who have purchased the book that went with it. Um, for me, it's been more of a sort of a collecting of a souvenir of going to places. I have yet to purchase one that I haven't gone to an exhibit, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm leaving open that door in the future.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
and typically they're not horribly expensive. I don't
it
know.
depends,
Yeah, I'm sure it's a mixed bag, but
yeah.
a lot of
I
times you
mean,
can get them without spending $150.
yes, yeah, no, that's true, absolutely. And it depends. Like the New Jersey one was a small run, a small like historical society thing, so it was a little pricey because it was a small place just trying to make them. I'm sure the Connecticut Historical Society was a much larger thing. So I mean, I don't remember the prices I paid for them, but it's certainly worth it for me
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
own these, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's that inspiration thing to me that goes through all of these
hmm
is because now last night I'm working on this little banding sampler where I'm just taking borders from different Bristol. Well, actually now it's become different samplers, but
uh-huh.
mainly Bristol samplers, and there's an alphabet that I put, and it's all capital letters and they're beautiful letters, but between the R and the S, because of the leg of the R, there
hmm
was a big gap, and it looked weird, and so I wanted to put some little something in there to fill that big giant visual gap.
hmm
And there was me spending a couple of hours looking through all kinds of resources to find a little thing that was 4 stitches wide and 10 or so stitches tall,
uh-huh.
but that would deliver that without becoming an eye attractant. Would
hmm
just fill that space and just blend into the background. And we were going to do these books, and I'm thinking, if I was at Arlene's, I'd spend a day looking for that one thing. Finally, I just settled on something simple and put it in
Yeah.
there because it was getting ridiculous how much time I
Yeah.
was spending. But it's that kind of thing. Having these books gives you those kinds of inspirations, gives you those little tidbits that you can use to fill in. Or if there's something in a design you don't like, and I'd really like to put something else there, you can go look those up.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and if you got the stitch books, the stitch dictionaries, you can figure out how to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still, I think, one of the hobbies, occupations. I think I can even say occupations, where to me books are still extremely valuable.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh yes. I mean,
yeah,
there's some specific instances like you showed that app is equal to the book, but there's a whole lot of places where having that book in hand just makes such a difference.
right, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Arlene, that was fun.
Yes. No, it's always fun to show books and to share with people who enjoy them. So
Yep.
yeah.
Well
Yeah.
played.
Thank
Well
you.
played. All right, that was fun. All right, thanks to everybody. Hope it was helpful. Hope you made lots of notes, and
Yep.
go buy some books. Uh, Book sales at libraries.
Yes.
Good way to get some of these books cheap. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Always look it up. Use the book sales.
Yep. All right. We're out. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.